Education Committee, the 2024 regular session. I'm going to ask all members and guests to please silence your cell phone. I'm going to advise guests that there are sign-up sheets in the back. Additional testimony on pieces of legislation or at the chair's discretion based on time restraints and information already presented. And always a reminder that no signs are permitted in the committee room. Do any of our members have any introductions they'd like to make at this time? Seeing none, Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Ballman.
Present.
Representative Bojanowski. Representative Brown. Representative Emily Callaway.
Present.
Representative Josh Callaway.
Present.
Representative Decker.
Present.
Representative Doan.
Present.
Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative Lewis.
Present.
Representative Massaroni.
Present.
Representative McCool. Representative Rayburn.
Here.
Representative Rawlings. Representative Raymond. Representative Riley.
Here.
Representative Timoney.
Here.
Representative Wilner.
Here.
Vice Chair Baker. Vice Chair Truitt. Chair Tipton.
Present. We do have a quorum to conduct business. We're going to defer from our agenda this morning. The first item on the agenda will be Senate Bill 191, an act relating to post-secondary education funding and declaring an emergency. Senator David Givens. Senator Givens, if you and your guests will please come forward and identify yourself for the record. It would be greatly appreciated. And after you identify yourself for the record, I will swear you in.
Mr. Chairman, I am State Senator David Givens, 9th Senate District here in Kentucky.
Chair Tipton, I'm William Payne, Vice President for Finance and Administration at the Council on Post-Secondary Education.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Well, please proceed with your presentation, Senator.
Chairman Tipton and members of the House Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 191 for your consideration. And I want to start by not just saying thanks for considering this bill. I want to thank you for the journey that you've been on with us and the students in post-secondary education and the Council on Post-Secondary Education for what will soon be 10 years. And when I say we're on a journey, one of the biggest challenges we face as policymakers is what I call continuity of policy. We transition in and out, 2 years, 4 years, administrations come and go. We have been singularly focused for almost 10 years now on a guiding North Star that CPE and the universities have all been pulling toward. It's called 60 by 30. And I'm going to take just a moment and share that story with you because it is so impactful. The goal being, if we can have 60% of Kentucky's citizens have a post-secondary credential that matters by the year 2030, we're going to impact economic mobility, we're going to impact revenues for the state, we're going to impact incarceration rates, we're going to impact overall health and community vitality. 60 by 30 is that North Star that we've been working toward for the last 10 years. Chairman Tipton, thank you for your leadership in this process. Now, what has turned the dial so positively for us has been performance-based funding. Years ago, we had a shares model based on whatever percentage of money a university got in the budget, that's what they got in the next budget, regardless of performance. In 2015, we started this process to say degrees matter and we're going to reward our universities based on degree attainment. Folks like Aaron Thompson matter, and we're going to reward them when they show up on time for committee meetings. But Aaron and Bill have been instrumental in helping guide this policy toward this North Star, and the successes we're seeing are off the charts. We started out around 48% in 2015 of post-secondary degree attainment. Bill was just sharing with me, and he's got copies. If anyone here wants one, I'd encourage you to take one. We started at 48 in 2015. Today we're at 55%. Again, the goal being 60 by 30, post-secondary degree attainment, a credential that matters to impact families. What you're seeing today, very briefly, is the latest iteration. And when I say the latest iteration, Chair Tipton, myself, the CPE leadership you see here at the table beside me, along with our university presidents, gather every 3 years to say what adjustments do we need to make. We met in 2015 and launched this effort. We met in 2018. We met in 2021. Now we're here in 2024 with that 3-year update. I don't even call it a course adjustment. I don't even call it a course correction. I'm suggesting what we're doing in this legislation is turning the dials very, very slightly to change some of those ways that we weight outcomes. The largest being, in this case, non-traditional students. We haven't been successfully awarding incentives to our post-secondary degree institutions around those non-traditional students. So this is us turning that dial just a little. I'm going to pause there. I'd like to ask President Thompson to share a few words and reflect on this as well.
President Thompson, could you identify yourself for the record, then I'll administer the oath.
Absolutely. Aaron Thompson, President of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Sorry a few minutes late. I got in a little bit of a traffic jam, but of course, 8 o'clock meetings make that happen sometimes. Let me just say a couple of things I think is really important. First of all, I would just say that when you talk about accountability systems, when we put this in place, post-secondary education created an accountability system. We're rewarding those items that are good for the state. The way we've designed this particular piece of the bill this time, as well as the way we designed it in the beginning, was really looking at what will our state need by 2030. To put it in context, you can look at any data out there that tells you that in Kentucky it's going to take 62% by 2030. So 60 by 30 just didn't happen out of the air, by the way. 62% by 2030 of the citizens of the state needing a credential, post-secondary credential that matters in order to participate actively into our labor force. It's predicted that 90% will have to have a post-secondary credential to get skilled up or moved up. So this is directly correlated with the needs of the state. The other items that I will say, and of course couldn't include everything, but the items that we've included are those items that directly affect that outcome. For an example, when we look at our adult learners, low-income populations, a variety of those, it takes more money to put in place in order to get those students where they need to go. In post-secondary education, our responsibility is what do we do with them when we get them? Yes, we'd like to create a better pipeline, as Representative Tipton will tell you, like what we're doing with our education continuum, to get more students engaged in post-secondary from high school. We're going to have to do a better job somehow of that in partnership, but our job is what do we do with them when we get them? And so this is a continuous improvement model. In other words, we look at and measure how far we've come in order to get to that 60 by 30. As Senator Givens has told you, we're at 55%, and you've probably seen the latest data. Kentucky's at the top in these areas, almost at the top in all these areas of improvement. But the point that I'm trying to make is that when we measure this, we saw that we're not moving low income as fast as we need to. So we changed that from a 3% to a 8% in order to get there, because our campuses are saying, Aaron Thompson, we've got to get more wraparound services to get where we need to go. So the point being is it's working. It's changing behaviors on our campuses. It's focusing exactly on those particular outcomes that are needed for the state, and we're consistently measuring it at the most minute position that we can in order to create that continuous improvement.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion and a second on Senate Bill 191. Are there any questions? Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, thank you. As I was reading the bill, the language for in the section, it's on page 4, for striking, it strikes bachelor's degrees awarded per 100 full-time equivalent students. Could you explain why that language is struck?
I'll respond to that question. 6 years ago, when the working group originally came together and constructed the performance funding model, degrees per 100 FTE students was an efficiency measure, an efficiency metric that was added to the funding model. It was used to weight bachelor's degrees produced. Every institution produced a certain number of degrees per 100 FTE. We calculated an average for the sector, which was in the university model, it would be the average for the universities. And then whether you were above or below that average was used to weight your bachelor's degrees. There was an unintended consequence with that metric. It actually penalizes institutions that are growing their enrollment, trying to progress more students, trying to get more students to the finish line. And so it runs counter to the growth-oriented goals of the model. So the working group came together, discussed this, and decided because it was running counter to the other incentives of the model, we needed to recommend that it be removed.
I have a question from Representative Raymond.
Hello, thank you all. So, can you help us all understand sort of the trends of performance-based funding? I know UK consistently earns the most, and then some of our universities, if I'm correct, earn nothing. So how could this help, and will it help some of our universities who have not been really successful in this process become stronger?
I'll respond first, and certainly my two colleagues can reflect on the question as well. I certainly do think that this will help all universities. And I think what we're seeing over time, and this took a period of time because we entered into this policy, like I said, around 2015. We were at a point in time, though, when the economy was not good and we weren't funding post-secondary education hardly at all. And so what happened is all the institutions that came into the mix, those that were actually carrying excess funding, that's not the right term, they were carrying a higher level of funding per full-time equivalent, ended up being normalized back. A lot of the institutions that you're talking about that haven't been earning successful funds from the program were actually arriving at a higher level of funding per full-time student. And so when we start measuring it, that started shifting and normalizing. So I do feel confident there's going to be lots of opportunities for all of our institutions to win under this, and these gentlemen can reflect on the outcomes better than I because they look at the numbers day in and day out. But I think we've got great opportunities for everybody.
We do, and we look at the numbers all the time. As a matter of fact, a couple of points I want to make. When we started this model, we had no new funding. We were switching money to each other, if you will, which is very problematic. A model like this is a growth model, and it works if you get funding to it, right? That's performance funding without funding is pretty tough. But we got funding, and three things that, and Senator Gibbons mentioned one of those, is one of the ways we had to do it to get people on what we call an equilibrium is to get them as close as possible to the same per FTE funding, period. Now, what happens in that? Number two. Well, what happens in that, those of smaller institutions, especially during a time where we were losing enrollment, really had a problem getting there because they couldn't get at that equilibrium. Moorhead, KSU, two great examples. Everybody's heard about that. So what we did then, number three, in this model, we said, okay, there really needs to be a small school adjustment here, especially since both of those institutions are serving very high need populations and really takes a lot more money for those wraparound services. And you have to have a base to build off of in a student success model, or you never get to where it's going to go. And in this case, this addition of performance-based funding, we've taken KSU and Moorhead to equilibrium, if you will. So now, based on performance, they still have to perform. Let me be clear. If you don't perform, you don't get. They will have, quote unquote, an equal opportunity to get in this case. And so what you've heard a lot about those that didn't get funding, they had a hold harmless basis that we did the last time around to where they didn't lose funding, but they had really a bank, if you will. So if they made money, had to take away from that bank, they didn't get anything. In this case, it becomes an opportunity for them to gain because now they're at equilibrium. Now, albeit those two were in a forced equilibrium state, whereas the others had reached equilibrium on the FTE model, but this gets us to that point.
I have a question. You mentioned non-traditional students, which are adults 25 to 64 in the legislation, and I know that's a metric that's being added to it. Do we know how many Kentuckians have some college credit but do not have a degree or credential?
We do. We have those numbers. We also have all kinds of different numbers. There's a little over 1 million out there with nothing that needs, that we realize that it may be some have aged out. So we're working with about 600,000 in this population group. Now, many of those will have some college or would have a lower skill up, something, a few hours. And we're working with employers, we're working with those, the basic adult education, working with a lot of folk that are not where they need to be. And two quick statements. We can't get to 60 by 30 without getting more high school graduates going to college and more adult learners back into college or into college. That's why this was an important metric for the state.
Okay, I see no more questions, and Senate Bill 191 having been properly motioned, receive the second. Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
Yes.
Representative Brown? Representative Emily Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Josh Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Decker? Representative Doan?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Jackson?
Yes.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative Massaroni?
Yes.
Representative McCool? Representative Rayburn?
Yes.
Representative Rawlings?
Yes.
Representative Raymond?
Yes.
Representative Riley? Yes. Representative Timoney?
Briefly explain my vote.
Proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for bringing this today. I'm definitely a yes on this, and this is the type of vision that we need driving our people forward in Kentucky. This is the type of vision that people can buy into and kids can focus on and their families can engage in. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Representative Truitt?
Yes.
Representative Wilner?
Yes.
Chair Tipton?
Chair votes yes. Senate Bill 191 having receiving 18 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 pass votes, passes for favorable expression. The same should pass on the House floor. Thank you, Senator Givens, you guessed.
Chairman, thank you, and thanks to each of you for your support of this legislation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Next, I'm going to call on Senate Bill 11. Senator Schickel, if you and your guests will come forward. I'll remind everyone that make sure those mics are turned on. Those green lights should light up. And please pull those microphones close to you so that you can be heard properly. And once you get settled, everybody please identify yourself for the record, and then I will administer the oath.
State Senator John Schickel, District 11.
Kimball Best, Assistant Superintendent for Operations, Boone County School District.
Jordan Turner, Boone County Attorney.
Philip Ridgel, Major, Boone County Sheriff's Office.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We do.
Well, thank you. Senator Schickel, I believe this is your last rodeo. So it's good to have you here this morning in the House Education Committee. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's an honor to be here before you and your esteemed committee. Thank you for hearing this important piece of legislation. This was heard by you all during the interim. I believe these same witnesses were here during a joint committee. It's also obviously passed the Senate, and I believe it was a unanimous vote in the Senate. But what this is, very simply, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, is we had a new county attorney elected, and she, along with our sheriff's department, discovered what we consider a loophole in the law where there's a delay in the courts notifying the schools when a juvenile is charged with a serious crime. Therefore, the schools being in the dark sometimes for 7-8 days about one of their students that's been charged. That is the what I call the Reader's Digest version of the bill.
Motion on the bill.
We do have a committee sub. Have a motion on the sub. Is there a second on the sub? Did I hear a second on the sub? Okay. Representative Bojanowski, I know you have a question. Please proceed.
Yes, I do. Could you explain the difference between the original?
I'll let the
Would you
chair.
like me to explain that, please?
Yeah.
In the original bill, on page 1, at the top on lines 5 and 6, And again, on 16 and 17, there is language that was strucken where it says the judge in the court in which the matter was tried shall direct thee. And in the sub, that language was added back in at the request of the Circuit Court Clerks Association. There is also language on page 4 of the bill, starting in line 12, where it would allow a superintendent may designate an employee of the school district to receive notices and carry out the responsibilities of the superintendent in those situations. And those are the changes in the committee sub from the original bill. Any other questions on the sub? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Committee sub is adopted. Now we have on the floor Senate Bill 11 as amended by the committee sub. I believe I heard a motion. Would somebody like to repeat that? Have a motion and a second on the bill. Representative Bojanowski.
I just wanted to clarify because I thought I heard someone say when a child had used of a certain crime. Is this? And then I'm reading in the bill, and I'm not an attorney. Adjudicated guilty. So is this information released when the youth is found guilty of the crime or when the youth is accused of the crime?
So, if I may, it would actually provide notice in both of those situations. So, the original statute prior to this legislation provides for notice to be given to the schools at an adjudication, which is at the end of the process. The new legislation allows for notice to be given at the very beginning of the process. The current statute already allows that, but there's a time delay when notice is to be given when a case is initiated. The new legislation simply moves up in time at the beginning of the case when the notice is to be given. Mm-hmm.
Glad to have our Assistant Superintendent and Sheriff here. You're welcome to add anything if you like, or we can proceed to the vote.
So on behalf of the school district, one of the key points of this, in support of this bill, is that having all of the appropriate information allows us to make the best decisions in order to keep all students safe, whether that would be the student who is going through the court process or any other students or staff members who might be impacted. So having this information earlier than in previous really allows us to provide the best support for all students in the situation.
From a law enforcement perspective, we support this because we did discover certain loopholes when our SROs are, to a degree, put in a bad situation of their knowledge. However, the law does not provide for them to share an activity or a law enforcement action the night before or the weekend before. So we see this as really a common sense bill that shores up some processes, and it's entirely under the purview of public safety. We don't view this as certainly a partisan bill in any way. This is designed to help the schools operate in a safer manner with victims in mind as well.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
Yes.
Representative Brown?
Yes.
Representative Emily Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Josh Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Decker? Representative Doan?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Jackson?
Yes.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative Massaroni?
Yes.
Representative McCool? Representative Rayburn?
Can I briefly explain my vote?
Please proceed.
I'm a no. I understand the intent of the bill and the need to protect public safety. I'm all about that. But I also don't think this bill allows for the due process rights as well. Thank you.
Representative Rawlings?
Yes.
Representative Raymond?
Yes.
Representative Riley? Yes. Representative Timoney?
Yes.
Representative Truitt?
Yes.
Representative Wilner?
Yes.
Chair Tipton?
Chair votes yes. Senate Bill 11, amended by House Committee Sub 1, having received 18 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 0 pass votes, passes for favorable expression. Same should pass on the House floor.
Thank you,
for being
Mr.
here
Chairman
today.
and members of the committee.
Next on our agenda, we're going to have House Bill 225, an act relating to education. Representative Steve Rollins, if you and your guests will please come forward. No, we have people signed up on this one.
I was waiting to see who he was going to have speak.
Representative Rollins, if you and your guests will please identify yourself for the record, then I will administer the oath.
Representative Steve Rawlings. I serve the 66th House District.
Hi, good morning. I am Sarah Peace. I am Policy Advisor for the Kentucky Department of Education.
Good morning. Matt Ross, Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations at the Kentucky Department of Education.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Representative Rollins, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 225 simply updates our statutes to reflect the modern mission of the Kentucky Department of Education. The measure was developed in conjunction with the department, as well as with parents, community members, and other stakeholders. While many of the changes proposed by this measure take aim at eliminating redundant, conflicting, and out-of-date language, I'm particularly pleased at the additions that we are proposing. For example, we would amend KRS 158.645 to establish educational excellence as a goal for our system of public education. The section would specifically read, state government, local communities, parents, students, and school employees must work together to create an efficient public school system to achieve excellence in education. The bill would also repeal outdated audit language found in KRS 157.06. Audits are still required with specific language found, but they're in other parts of the statute. An unnecessary reporting requirement would be eliminated from KRS 160.345, and then KRS 158.856 would be repealed as it duplicates a federal requirement for school nutrition. A section of KRS 157.065 would be eliminated because it is no longer necessary, and a section of KRS 157.063 would be repealed as it requires reporting to a legislative committee that no longer exists.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion and a second on our bill. Do any of our representatives from KDE have anything they'd like to add at this time?
No, I think he did a very good job, but
All
I'm happy
right.
to take questions.
All right, Representative Bojanowski has a question.
Right. So it helps me a little bit. So I just was wanting to know a little bit more about the repeal of 157.061, the annual audits of school districts. So that is being done in some other part of the statute. Could you just explain that a little further?
So I brought it because I anticipated this question. This is what's being repealed. This is from 1996, and this anticipated that there would be one central technology system where the department could pull the audit information. That's not how it's done. There's a separate statute that requires districts to contract with an auditor. That audit is done annually and then sent to the department. The department then, and that audit is done per the audit is created by the state school district audit committee. So there's a committee of not just KDE people, but the APA. They create the sort of form. Then the audits are done locally per that contract, and then that's reported and becomes the annual financial report to the Kentucky Department of Education. It's published. It's on our website. So it's just a different process than what was envisioned back in 1996.
Okay, I see no more. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Josh Callaway.
Yes, thank you. I did have a quick question on page 1, line 22. Could you all explain what the cultural literacy actually is? Is that a curriculum or is a concept?
Really, that's just a current term that's used, and it's a very popular term, and it just reflects that what the rest of the sentence says, that basically I would say so that a person knows who they are, what they believe in, where they come from, to know their historical background.
Okay, I see no more questions from members, but we have two members of the public who have asked to speak. If you all could leave the table for a minute, I want to ask Zachary Clifton and Francis Anapi if they would please come forward. Thank you all for being here this morning. Just make sure those lights are on bright green there in front of you, and pull those mics close to you. If you will identify yourself for the record, then I will administer the oath.
Thanks for having us today. My name is Zachary Clifton, and I'm a senior at Corbin High School.
Thanks for having me as well. My name is Anopa Masoni. I'm a senior at Lafayette High School in Lexington.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
So we're here today representing the Kentucky Student Voice Team, which is an independent youth-led organization working to co-create more just and democratic Kentucky schools and communities. We're also here today to amplify and elevate student voice in the conversation about House Bill 225. And as you know, this bill seeks to revisit and revise the legacy of the 1989 Rose versus Council for Better Education decision. This was the decision which ultimately led to the constitutional promise to provide Kentucky's public school students with an adequate education and a guarantee that our schools will work to provide our young people with 7 specific capacities. This was also the decision that inspired states all around our country to follow Kentucky's lead and adopt similar language in their own constitutions to promote the best possible public schools. As members of the Kentucky Student Voice Team, we appreciate that this bill shines a light on Rose, as we too have spent the last year delving into the legacy of the decision. In October, the Kentucky Student Voice Team embarked on our Rose Revival campaign to hear from Kentucky's students, educators, families, and community members about the enduring legacy of the Rose decision. We have been traveling the Commonwealth, hosting forums in Corbin, Bowling Green, Louisville, and Hazard, soliciting thousands of responses in a statewide State of Our Schools survey, conducting dozens of interviews with education stakeholders, and building a robust coalition of organizational and individual partners dedicated to reviving the legacy of the Rose decision. Our campaign has proven that Kentuckians are, without a doubt, grateful for the rights afforded to them in the Rose decision. Many of the forum attendees and individuals we have engaged with have had no prior knowledge of the Rose decision or the 7 capacities, but most, if not all, feel these capacities are comprehensive and still, nearly 35 years on after the decision, relevant to the needs of students today. However, many of these people do not feel the state is adequately providing students with these capacities. What we have learned has been in line with much of the publicly available data, suggesting that the legacy of Rose has wilted in recent years. The inequities in funding between Kentucky's poorest and wealthiest districts have expanded beyond the levels declared unconstitutional in 1989. Unfortunately, these inequities have had tangible consequences, and we've uncovered those in our research on the 7 capacities. We know that the education students receive is not equitable compared to the education their peers receive from other parts of Kentucky. Few times has that been as evident as the youth-led, community-based Rose Revival forums that we have been having all across our Commonwealth. One student told us that their school does not have the resources to provide adequate instructions in economic, social, and political systems at all. And as it specifically relates to a civically cognizant curriculum, another student told us that even though we have a civics requirement, we still aren't being educated about politics and government.
Preliminary quantitative data from our statewide study backs this up. Out of over 1,200 students who responded to the Kentucky Student Voice Team's State of School survey, fully 1/4 disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement that their school prepares them to participate as a citizen of a democracy. As Zachary mentioned, our qualitative data collected from our forums mirrors this theme. I have here in my hand our post-forum memos from Bowling Green, Louisville, and Corbin, which provide a glimpse into what we've heard around the 7 capacities. It is evident in these memos and in our survey that communities around the Commonwealth are struggling to provide adequate education on civics, and additional data from external sources also align. According to the Secretary of State's Civic Health Assessment, most respondents could not name a local elected official, nor could they even name a legislator that represents them. If a majority of respondents cannot name a legislator that represents them, that is also to say, if a majority could not name any of the legislators in this room, what kind of education are we providing? We cannot emphasize enough the importance that our Commonwealth's education system lives up to its constitutional promise in Rose, a promise that explicitly guarantees a student's right to learn about civics, including the political systems and governmental processes at the national, state, and local level. This bill would advance civics education. In fact, the legislator has been keenly focused on civic education this legislative session, a fact for which we are grateful. However, we question the provision of this bill, which would amend Capacity 2 to remove the requirement that students are educated to make wise political decisions. We want to emphasize that while the Secretary of State's civic health assessment is stark, explicit, and instructive, it also offers hope. Something that caught our attention was that the vast majority of respondents felt our lawmakers should work together to achieve legislative success through compromise. We've heard similar sentiments around the state from the attendees of our Rose Revival forums. Each of our forums has brought together citizens from across political, racial, and generational divides for difficult conversations about our schools. Yet, what we have heard has not been partisan bickering or conversation focusing on our differences. Rather, Kentuckians have banded together to share their common desire for an educational system that works for all Kentuckians. That starts by reviving the constitutional rights of students in every Kentucky classroom. Our conversation with these stakeholders continues. Later this month, we'll be hosting our 5th forum in Lexington, and our final forum in Owensboro is slated for early next month. Our forum surveys and interviews will culminate in the publication of a State of School report in the fall of this year that succinctly captures the hopes of students, teachers, and parents in their vision for our education system's future based on the 7 capacities of Rose. Today, our purpose in being here is to demonstrate to the legislature that students not only harbor extensive and nuanced perspectives on the Rose decision, but that they are also capable of leading conversation with families, educators, and policy leaders as stewards of Rose's legacy. We invite members of this committee to join us in conversation, to engage with our Rose Revival campaign, and to center the voice of education stakeholders in this discussion as we have done. With House Bill 225, we as students can appreciate that the legislator cares as much about the Rose decision as we do. For that, we thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Any members have any brief questions for our guests? We are on tight. I will mention that yesterday we passed out of the full House Bill 535, an act related to civics education that is geared toward actually improving civics education in Kentucky. Well, thank you all for being here today, and thank you to all the members on your Student Voice team for the work you do on behalf of students all across the Commonwealth.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Representative Rollins, you'll come back to the table briefly. I see no more questions on House. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Wilner.
Thank you. And this is really Representative Rawlings in response to the students who just testified. Looking at line 14 of page 1 of, could you just talk a little bit about the decision to remove political? And I guess I'll make it a 2-part question. Would you consider a House forum that back in?
Yeah, we could definitely put that back in. I eliminated political. We eliminated that as because it's a hot button when you talk about politicization of something. So we tried to make up with that with number 4, when we list the constitutional republic, the 3 branches of government, and how government impacts citizens. So that was pretty much to replace the word political taken out.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
See no more questions. Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
May I briefly explain my vote?
Briefly.
I'm a yes vote, and I appreciate literacy added into our capacities. Thank you.
Representative Brown?
Yes.
Representative Emily Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Josh Callaway?
I'll briefly explain my pass vote.
Yes.
I just want to work with you. I know you're open to changes and things, just like to understand this a little bit better and maybe talk about some change and some wording there, but thank you.
Okay, sure.
Representative Decker?
Pass.
Representative Doan?
Pass.
Representative Jackson?
Yes.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative Massaroni?
Yes.
Representative McCool? Representative Rayburn?
I'd like to briefly explain my vote.
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to vote no today, but with the proper floor amendments, I could be a yes on the floor. Thank you.
Representative Rawlings?
Yes.
Representative Raymond?
Yes.
Representative Riley? Yes. Representative Timoney?
Yes.
Representative Truitt?
Yes.
Representative Wilner?
Yes.
Chair Tipton?
Chair votes yes. House Bill 225, having received 15 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 3 pass votes, passes with favorable expression. Same should pass on the House floor. Thank you. Next, we have House Bill 605, an act relating to professional development. Representative Tim Truitt. Representative Truitt will come to the table if any guest he has. Representative Truitt, would you please identify yourself for the record?
Representative Tim Truitt, District 89, State Representative.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And to begin with, Representative Truitt, would you explain the difference in the original House Bill 605 and the committee sub it's provided? Sorry about that, Representative Bojanowski.
Okay. Yes, the committee sub does 2 things. In line 5, it changes the word from a to any. And then in line 14, it goes away from being very specific on the job trainings to something a little more broad. So it says job opportunities, pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, and pathways within the building and construction trade industry.
Do we have a motion on committee sub?
Motion.
Have a motion and a second on committee sub. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Please go on with your presentation, Representative Truitt.
Thank you. Been in education for quite a while. And, when I first started, we had the mindset that in order to be, successful in life, you need a college education. And that's kind of the way I was brought up going through high school, and that's kind of the way it was when I first got into education. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've kind of had a shift to where there's just as much emphasis put on career pathways, and to be honest, when I first thought about this bill, or when this bill was brought to me and kind of discussed, I was like, this is not really earth shattering. And the more that I've studied it, and the more that I've looked into it, this may be one of the most beneficial pieces of legislation that we passed this year, because right now we have counselors who are wanting to learn about the trades. We have students who are wanting to learn about the trades. And like in my district, for example, I've got a high school senior who doesn't want to go to college. He wants to do something with his hands, whether that be, electrician or construction. And to be honest, there's a lot of opportunities out there for our students that we're not aware of. I mean, there's programs out there that could be life-changing for some of our students. And that's what this bill is going to do. It doesn't mandate anything. It just allows a counselor, as opposed to using their 24 hours of required professional development on things that may not be that useful for them. It allows them to... All right. Good deal. I'm done. a good bill.
We have a motion and a second on the bill. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Representative Massaroni.
Thank you. I see in here that's counselors for 7th grade, 8th grade. That's kind of a concern. I feel like we're pushing our kids to be more grown up. In 7th and 8th grade, the counselors counseling them on trades, which is kind of common across the Commonwealth. So, is that?
Well, I understand your concern a little bit, but then I also know that you've got kids who are in middle school who are thinking about their future, and I don't see anything wrong with a student learning about some of the opportunities that out there, whether it be in electricians or whether it be in plumbing or welding. I mean, there's tons of opportunities out there. I don't really see a problem with someone in middle school exploring those. I mean, we're not going to turn nobody loose with a welder, in 6th or 7th or 8th grade, but we might show them a video, or we might, put a poster up, in the school that says, hey, if you want to weld, you could make, starting off making 6 figures, and that's the thing. We want students to realize that, you can use your hands. If you will work, you can make a good living, without having that college education. So, that's kind of where that comes in. I think the earlier we can get them exposed to some of these things, I think the better.
Me too. Any other questions? Seeing none, Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
May I briefly explain my
Yes.
vote? So I have a son who's in the first year of an apprentice program with IBEW to become an electrician, and it has been life-changing for him. With this legislation, students like my son, who dabbled in college, smart kid, but he just wasn't interested. He may have found something earlier, and so I commend you for bringing this. Thank you.
What was your Representative Bojan? Thank you. Representative Brown?
Yes, explain my yes vote.
Proceed.
Thank you, Representative Truitt, for bringing this bill. I think education must be global.
Representative Brown, is your microphone on, please?
Yes, it is.
Could you pull it just a little bit closer? I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you.
Representative Truitt, I appreciate you bringing this bill forward, because our education does need to be multifaceted across all spectrums, and giving children, our young people, opportunities that education and the strict K through 12 may not afford them. So, and college may not be the thing for them. So we need technicians. So thank you very much for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Representative Emily Callaway?
Briefly explain my yes vote.
Proceed.
I want to thank you, too, for bringing this. This is some of the feedback that I heard in one of my counties as well. Students are ready to start jumping into this and exploring some other options besides the regular path that's being pushed a little bit within the school. So thank you very much for this.
Representative Josh Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Decker?
Explain my vote.
Proceed.
Thank you for this bill, Representative. In my county, I have a young girl. She shadowed me here one day, and she had decided, I think she was in middle school, that she wanted to be a welder. And so she got into the welding program, and she quickly decided she didn't want to be a welder. So it helped her rule that out. But then she decided she wanted to be in construction. But one of the problems was they got to have internships, but she never really got to have an internship in construction, because I think the counselors weren't aware of all the things she could have done. And so it was either you go out on the line and get in grave danger at your age as a young lady in a crew. I'm sure there were other things. So I love the part about the training of the counselors. So I think it's an excellent bill. I appreciate it. I think it starts at just the right time, and thank you for bringing it. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Representative Doan?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Jackson?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative Massaroni? Representative McCool? Representative Rayburn?
Yes.
Representative Rawlings?
Yes.
Representative Raymond? Representative Riley? Representative Timoney?
Great bill, terrible sponsor. I'm a yes.
Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Representative Wilner,
Yes.
Chair Tipton.
Chair votes yes. House Bill 605 is amended by the committee sub, having received 19 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 pass votes. Passes for favorable expression. The same should pass on the House floor. Next, we have House Bill 695, an act establishing the Adaptive Kindergarten Readiness Pilot Project. Representative Kevin Jackson, if you and your guests will please come forward and identify yourself for the record, then I will administer the oath.
Representative Kevin Jackson, District 20, Bowling Green and Warren County.
Steve Robertson with Frost Brown Todd.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Tipton and members of the Education Committee, my friends on the Education Committee. Remember that when you vote. But just want to say thank you for letting us present House Bill 495. And Mr. Chairman, there is a committee sub.
Representative Jackson, could you briefly explain the difference between the sub and the original bill?
Well, I thought Representative Bojanowski would ask me to do that, so I was ready.
I'm on a tight agenda this morning.
I was ready. I was ready to do that. There's only one word in all of that bill. On page 5, line 15, there's one word that was added, and that is federal funds. So that's the only addition that the committee sub makes.
Any members have any questions on the committee sub? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Motion on the sub.
Have a motion and a second on the committee sub. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Committee sub's adopted. Please proceed, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. House Bill 695 establishes a pilot project to provide preschool children with access to educational technology programs designed to improve kindergarten readiness through family engagement. Over 50% of Kentucky kids are not kindergarten ready on day one. Let me repeat that. Over 50% of Kentucky kids are not kindergarten ready on day one. That number alarms me, and I hope it does some of you, since we know how critical the early years to learning are. The members of both parties have co-sponsored this bill, and here's some talking points about House Bill 695. The project will run for 2 school years, 24-25, 25-26, if funds are available. Eligible children include 4- and 5-year-olds who are not yet enrolled in kindergarten. There will be an application process from across Kentucky looking to attract at least 400 kids in the pilot program. The project will use family engagement to deliver age-appropriate reading instruction with an online learning platform. Recommended 20 minutes per day. It'll offer optional instruction in math and science if wanted. It'll align with state standards and national guidelines and assist children with disabilities in preparing for kindergarten. This project will reserve 40% of its slots for children from families up to 200% of the federal poverty level and areas of persistent poverty. Students from families with incomes below 400% of the federal poverty level will receive a computer or tablet and internet access if needed and at no cost to the family for the duration of the participation. KDE will select a qualified provider to implement the project. There are several organizations, several companies out there that do this. I have seen some of those in action, and they are really, really good. The project will be evaluated to assess its effectiveness in improving kindergarten readiness, and KDE will be required to submit reports to the LRC by December 1 of 2025. The project's implementation is contingent upon funding availability. Like most things up here, funding is the key issue. KDE has assured us that they can run at least a one-year pilot using ESSER dollars that they have left over. We would love to find money for the second year of this project. I'll take 1 year if that's all we can get, but we would love to find either general fund dollars or another grant or something to make this thing 2 years so we could really get some in-depth information and see if this is feasible, if it moves the needle as far as increasing that less than 50% of kindergartners that are ready to start on day one.
Have a motion and a second on the bill. Have a question from Representative Raymond. I believe Will.
Hello, thank you. When I started reading this bill, I got so excited. I've got a passion for early childhood education and its effect on Indian poverty, and I was woken up by a 4-year-old today, and so I just thought, I just can't wait to read the rest of this bill. I got to page 2, and I went, oh, we're giving them computers. But I know that our job here is not to think, is this the single best thing for kids, right? Is this a better option than the status quo? And I believe that it is. Best practice, of course, would be to have all of our 3- and 4-year-olds in a play-based social environment. That's not possible. So my question really is around who will have access to this. You know, I know it mentions kids in preschool, Head Start, and our child care centers may have access. I believe that they are in wonderful learning environments as they are, right? And we know that our lowest kindergarten readiness rates by far are the kids who stay at home until they show up to kindergarten. And so I wanted to know if you would work with me to make it so that this bill targets the kids who are at home with no other early learning options.
Thank you for your question. It's a great question. And I represent one of the entities in this space, and their experience with this technology is right on point with your question. They see the best results when the platform is used at home with an engaged parent or caregiver to run them through that daily 15 to 20 minute module. So I would strongly suspect that whoever the Kentucky Department of Education would select for this pilot will be working with KDE and the education network across the state to really dive into the communities where those children and parents are. But to your point, it is proven effective in the home setting. My client was actually recently awarded a grant through the United States Department of Education to look at application of this technology in child care settings. That grant will cover a pretty large swath of the southeastern United States. Kentucky will be part of that, but I don't suspect that those efforts will really get into full swing until sometime before 2028. But they are looking at that. But the in-home application is a proven winner, and I think that would probably be the focus of a program like this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question from Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And related question, actually, and I'm a co-sponsor of this bill. I'm all for it. I think this is really good stuff. The part that excites me the most is on page 2 that utilizes family engagement. So this is very much a follow-up from what Rep. Raymond was asking about. You know, it's really not best practice, not recommended to just stick 3- and 4-year-olds in front of a computer and here you go. But we know that multi-generation learning model is what's effective. And Rep. Jackson, I was really glad to hear you say you've seen this in action. And I wonder if you could maybe describe what that family engagement piece actually looks like.
I will tell you from my standpoint what I did about an hour, I'll call it an in-service with the company the other day. And what I could see is, you know, family gets home from work, kids get home from daycare, wherever. Sometime they set aside 15 or 20 minutes that night where they can get together as a family, mom, dad, if possible, and 4-year-old, and sit down and engage with this program. What I saw was very entertaining, I guess to say. But, for a 4-year-old, you got to make it entertaining if they're going to, and you could pick right answers, and they would tell you if you picked the wrong answer. And I could just see it. And I know computers are not the ideal thing. But this is not a phone that they're sitting there scrolling on. This is a computer program designated for learning. And if we can bring a family together for 15 minutes, that probably wouldn't do that if it wasn't for this program. They probably wouldn't do that anyway for 15 or 20 minutes. So I think it's a win-win where we can bring a family together and do something educational. I think it'll make that family learn together, work together, and continue to do that hopefully through elementary, middle school, and high school.
Thank you very much.
I have a question from Representative Rayburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a Vanderbilt study that is actually pretty interesting, and I'd like to share it with members of the committee after this meeting. But in that study, it showed that the initial data looked good for pre-K. But then the longer the follow-up in grade 3, it kind of showed worse outcomes. Kids getting into trouble in school, things of that nature. So I'd like to share that with members of the committee. But my question is following kids in kindergarten enough of an evaluation, or should we follow them for a longer process to conclude the pilot is a actual success? Similar to that of the study from Vanderbilt, are we going to have that data to show that it's actually successful? Because, the hypothesis is to shove a ton of academics down a kid's throat and they end up being more prepared for kindergarten. But in some studies, like the one I'll provide to members of this committee, it actually ends up having kids having negative feelings towards school right around that grade 3 level. Any comments on that?
Yes, I'll take that if you don't mind, Representative. Great question. Thank you. So the client that I represent has been active in the state of Utah for over a decade. And the state of Utah certainly required its own assessments of students who had been exposed to this technology versus those in a control group who had not. And certainly what they found for kindergarten readiness is there was a significant improvement in the readiness of the child as they entered kindergarten. Utah then chose to engage in a longitudinal study. So to your point, so that they could track the performance of the children who went through this program through a number of grade levels. And what they found is that the children who went through this program certainly exceeded the performance of children who did not. And I have that longitudinal study and would be happy to share it with the members of this committee following. But specific to who I represent in the state of Utah, they actually did, Utah placed that demand to figure out how are these kids tracking over time. And they were extremely satisfied with the outcomes there. And now in Utah, it started as a small pilot. Now this platform is available to every pre-K eligible child in the state, and that's taken over a decade to get there, but they've been very satisfied with the outcomes.
Mr. Chairman, brief follow-up.
Briefly.
It's interesting. I would like to see, what we're comparing in this program and if whether or not an academic program or a more play-based program is efficient for the success of our students here in Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for bringing this forward. I had an opportunity to participate in early childhood fellowship a few years ago, and I really learned a lot about how critical from literally birth to 5 is on the trajectory of a student's educational outcome. I do want to reference the study out of Vanderbilt. That was out of the Nashville City School System, and the sample size was so incredibly small that study has been debunked over and over again. The reality is that with pre-K programs in particular, it's not about pre-K programs because it could be also childcare. It's high quality childcare. That's the phrase, high quality childcare. I think we all should stop talking about universal pre-K. We need to talk about high quality childcare. And that means having highly skilled professionals working with our kids. The basics, socialization is very, very important. We have students in pre-K programs that need to learn how to operate in spaces with other 8 little people that look just like them. They need to understand rule following. They need to understand all the basics so that they can become high achievers and they can learn in academic settings. So any program with intentionality, I would like to echo one of the other statements as far as the computer-based program. Still, the quality of the human being in front of that classroom, there's no way to justify any change from that. There's no way to say that there's a better way of doing it. There's no computer, there's no AI, there's nothing. It's that human being in the front of that classroom is the critical point. But this is a step in the first direction. Any investment we can make with this group, I'm 100% supportive of. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Representative Timoney. And the reason I brought this bill to you today, my 4 grandkids all have had the privilege of being in a pre-K church-related school. We've been very fortunate that they've been able to do that. My 9-year-old now he tests in the 99th percentile on reading and math in the 3rd grade. But not every kid in Kentucky has the opportunity to attend a private, religious, pre-K school. So I'm thinking about those kids. What can we do to help those kids? And if we can get 15 or 20 minutes with them and their caregiver, whether that's a parent, whether that's a grandparent, whether that's whoever, older brother or sister, if we can get 15 or 20 minutes with them to try to learn how to read at 4 years old and become better prepared for kindergarten on day 1, then I feel like we've done something to leave a mark on the state of Kentucky. And that's the reason I brought this. It's not for my grandkids. They're going to be able to get it with a teacher in front of them. But a lot of kids are not going to be able to do that across the state of Kentucky. And this could be an opportunity like it has been in Utah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll take one more question from a member, then we're going to vote. Representative Decker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the bill and your presentation. I have a question about how important is the internet piece to this? And I'll tell you why I ask. When my children were small, my daughter's 3 years older, so when she was 6 and he was 3, we had a computer. It was not always on the internet. In fact, I don't think my children could have gotten on the internet a long time ago. But we had a program, I think it was Magic School Bus Math. All it did was you turn it on, that math program was there, and I don't think I would have known what to expect of my son until I saw him proceeding through levels of math at 3 years old. It was a game. He learned. It was just astonishing to me. Could we take out the internet portion? How important is the internet portion of the bill?
Thank you, Representative. Great question. I'll take that. So the client that I represent, their platform is a web-based platform. And typically, if a family does need a device, there's a tablet of some sort or a laptop that is not fancy but sufficient to handle the interaction with the platform. And if there's a need for internet, typically in 90% of the instances, a hotspot device can be sent with that equipment so that parents are trained to use that. But not every household has an internet demand. But we do want to make sure that I don't want to assume that KDE is going to select the entity that I represent, but we do want to make sure that whatever platform might be necessary, whatever needs might be there for that platform, that at least the framework of the bill speaks to servicing that platform. And in my instance, it would be a web-based platform, and internet could be a barrier to a family engaging, particularly a family that's at the lower 200% of federal poverty level or below. The internet could be a barrier.
Just follow up briefly.
Briefly, please.
But could this be achieved without the internet? Could you load them with programs that would achieve the same purpose but protect against any harm that might be done by the internet? And who is giving, the safeguards that might be necessary for the internet? And I don't think the bill covers that.
Right. Certainly the bill does not cover that. We assume that parents can help children make those decisions about what they're exposed to online. I know at our home we do.
Sure.
But the bill does not speak to that. We just want to make sure that there is no barrier to a family engaging in a system like that to better prepare their child for kindergarten. Thank you, though. Yes.
Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
Yes.
Representative Brown?
Explain my vote.
Briefly.
I had a question, Representative Jackson, and my vote is contingent upon the answer to the question. Your sub, item 7, says...
Representative Brown, you're recognized to explain your vote.
I asked to be recognized before
I
the vote was
apologize if
taken.
you weren't, staff did not have you on my list. I apologize for that.
Well, I just need to get this out, that the thing is that this would be, this section, to the extent that federal funds are available, I think we need to pursue it whether federal funds are available or not. And my vote would be yes, contingent on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So was that a yes or a pass?
I said yes.
Okay, I just didn't hear. Representative Emily Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Josh Callaway?
No.
Representative Decker?
Pass.
Representative Doan?
No, ma'am.
Representative Jackson?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Lewis? Representative Massaroni? Representative McCool? Representative Rayburn?
I'd like to explain my vote.
Proceed.
I'm a no today. I would encourage my colleagues to look at that Vanderbilt study, which did include a sample size of 3,000 students. Thank you.
Representative Rawlings?
Pass.
Representative Raymond?
Yes.
Representative Riley?
If I could explain my vote
Briefly.
real fast, my yes vote. Doing nothing is not a solution. We've got a major crisis, not only in our state, but in our country, of having young people who are not prepared. In many cases, it's not their fault. Obviously, many of them are growing up in difficult situations. But if we do nothing, that's exactly what we're going to get, nothing.
Representative Timoney?
Yes.
Representative Truitt?
Yes.
Representative Wilner?
Briefly explain my yes vote.
Briefly.
I'm fully supportive of this. I'm yes today, and I think any initiative that's going to encourage parents and their kids to learn together is a positive thing. So thank you for the bill.
Chair Tipton?
Chair votes yes. House Bill 695, as amended by the committee sub, having received 12 yes votes, 3 no votes, and 2 pass votes, passes for favorable expression. Same should pass on the House floor. Next on our agenda is House Bill 798, Representative Nick Wilson. If he has any guests, please come forward. And please identify yourself for the record when you get to the table. Then I will administer the oath.
Representative Nick Wilson, 82nd District, Whitley County.
Representative Deanna Fraser Gordon, Madison County District 81.
Rodney Richardson, Chief of Police, Richmond, Kentucky.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have this morning a very simple bill that just adds to the list of weapons included in our statute based on school grounds. I brought the chair and our colleague to say where this need come from, if you don't mind to give some background on what happened.
Thank you all for allowing me to be here. Right now, basically, the weapons that are prohibited on school property in the KRS have some really good items that do not need to be on school grounds. But what it includes is part of the deadly weapon statute. And if you read the deadly weapon statute, the items that are prohibited include a knife other than an ordinary pocket knife or hunting knife. Now, there's no definition specifically for what an ordinary pocket knife should look like, appear, be like, or a hunting knife specifically. And manufacturers out there, you could look on your smartphone now, just look up hunting knife. You can find anything from 8 inches to 17 inches. So we've had cases where students are bringing these large fixed blade knives, keeping them in backpacks, bringing them on school property, And there's nothing that law enforcement can do in order to charge them for bringing those knives, regardless of what purpose it's for. We honestly don't see a purpose for a hunting knife or anything that calls itself a hunting knife on school property. And that's why specifically included in the bill is a knife with a blade size no longer than 3 inches. So when I was in school, I worked on a farm, and I had a pocket knife, and this is not a zero tolerance part of the bill. It's just basically saying, hey, if you're going to carry a knife, an ordinary pocket knife is a blade that is 3 inches and nothing any longer. So we specifically had a case in Richmond where a student did not have access to firearms, which is prohibited. So what they did, they stole their parents' car, they drove to a pawn shop, they tried to break in a pawn shop and access a weapon. They couldn't get the weapon. So they decided they would grab a knife, the largest knife they could find, go to the school and wait for students to get off the school bus. And they contemplated how many students they could attack before it could be ended. Now, luckily, that did not occur and it was stopped. But these are the kind of things that we're facing as law enforcement when we talk about weapons on school property.
Motion on the bill.
Second.
Have a motion, a second on the bill. We do have some questions, but I'm going to go first. As you describe this, it'd be any knife if a blade 3 inches or longer. Is there anything in this bill that would prevent a school district from having a policy more restrictive than this?
I don't believe so. Do you?
No. No, sir.
Okay. A question from Representative Rayburn.
I guess I'm a little confused with this piece of legislation. I understand the intent of it, but don't all school districts prohibit weapons from being on their grounds? I know when I was in school, no knives were allowed, even a pocket knife. So I'm wondering the ultimate goal here, or the need for this language change.
Well, I think even if a school has a policy against carrying a knife, it's not in this statute making it a felony that would be actionable in juvenile court. That's what this statute does.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Bojanowski.
I suppose my question's kind of along the same. I mean, I'm a teacher, and I honestly wouldn't want a child to have a knife that was 2.9 inches long in the school building. I mean, we can't take anything on an airplane. I don't believe that we should be able to have any knives. Can you just speak again a little bit on, I mean, I don't think students should bring a pocket knife or a small hunting knife to school either. Could you maybe reflect on why you selected 3 inches or longer? Because that really concerns me.
I think that's a decision a school can make of school policy. I mean, there are cultural reasons where people carry pocket knives. Some people collect them, trade them. That may not be appropriate to do at school, and the school can decide that. But this bill's deciding what is a Class D felony and what is not. I think there's been a long-standing. It lists deadly weapon, but as the officer stated, that list isn't really capturing some of the knives they're seeing. So maybe that's a question of, do we want to ban pocket knives or not? More than, but it's also about the felony as well, which I think is separate from school policy.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I'm reading this correctly, this does not just apply to students. If I'm a spectator at a basketball game or football game and I come in with a pocket knife in my pocket and something happens and I'm found to have over 3 inches in my pocket, I could be charged with a felony?
That'd be correct. Yes, sir. It's on school property. It would fall under the same as a firearm or anything else that's restricted currently.
And just for the record, could you remind us what is the penalty for a Class D felony?
It's punishable 1 up to 5 years.
Thank you.
Representative Doan.
Representative Baker took most of my talking points, but I've got a box cutter at home that has a knife on the end, and 3 inches isn't much bigger than my finger. And so, I've got concerns about folks that may accidentally walk in with a box cutter that they had at work to a school game to watch their kid play basketball, and now we're accidentally charging them with a felony because it fell out of their pocket. So I've got concerns with that. Thank you.
If I may add, I think it specifies the blade has to be 3 inches or longer, not the total device. So in a box cutter situation, the razor would not be extended more than 3 inches, as far as box cutters that I've seen.
Go ahead, Representative Down.
I should have been more specific. There's a box cutter, and on the other end is a knife. It's kind of a multi-utility tool. I've used it when I used to assemble grills at Lowe's, and so it's just got that extra knife on there that's more than 3 inches, and I'd rather not get a felony for that.
And there are many exceptions listed in the statute already regarding hunting knives. It even mentions hunting season, crossing the property. The goal is not to charge people with felonies that have a pocket knife in their pocket at a basketball game.
Committee will stand at ease. Members have asked several questions today and expressed some concerns. After consultation with the sponsor on the bill, this bill will not be voted on today for discussion only. Any other questions? Next is House Bill 799. Representative Wilson, you're already here and you're already sworn in. Do you have any other guests with you on this one?
No, sir, I do not.
Well, you're already sworn in, so please introduce yourself for the record again and proceed.
Nick Wilson, 82nd District, Whitley County. My guest would have been, he's actually in Washington, D.C. today, so he's seeing all forms of government today. My guest would have been the Corbin, Director of Pupil Personnel and Home Hospital Services. He brought an issue to my attention that they had been experiencing at Corbin Independent School where some students would check into a facility for mental health related reasons, and those stays are normally a few days, 3-4 days, and based on the regulation, KAR, there would be no funding for the educational services provided because they require a hospital stay of longer than 5 days. So my bill, House Bill 799, would simply make a distinction between the inpatient facilities for this place called the Trillium Center. It doesn't lower the length needed for a home hospital stay, but it does just make the distinction for these inpatient
Motion
facilities.
on the bill.
Have a motion second on House Bill 799. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
Yes, thank you.
Representative Brown?
Yes.
Representative Emily Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Josh Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Doan?
Yes.
Representative Jackson?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative Massaroni? Representative McCool? Representative Rayburn?
Yes.
Representative Rawlings?
Yes.
Representative Raymond? Representative Riley? Representative Timoney?
Yes.
Representative Truitt?
Yes.
Representative Wilner?
Yes.
Chair Tipton?
Chair votes yes.
Thank you.
House Bill 799, having received 18 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 pass votes, passes with favorable expression. Same should pass on the House floor. Thank you, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Last item on the agenda is House Bill 828. Representative Timoney has already headed to the table. So please identify yourself for the record, Representative Timoney, and then I will swear you in.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. Kinley Timoney, State Representative, 45th District.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Committee. I'm excited to be here today to talk about this bill. As a former teacher and administrator, one of the things that I felt was really, really important that was missing from our current schools, in our current systems, is a funded mentorship program for our teachers. I make no bones about it. The X factor with student achievement is that grown up in the classroom and how skilled they are. And I think that one of the pieces where we are today, with so many new teachers and so many teachers that are coming into the profession from other professions, our different options that we're creating, there's an even greater need for a mentorship program.
Just for clarification, there is a committee sub. Okay, we had a motion on the sub in a second. Representative Bojanowski, would you like to ask Representative Timoney a question?
Representative Timoney, could you explain between the original bill and the sub, please?
Yes, ma'am. The substitute removes the requirement of an offer of employment prior to receiving a provisional certificate for the options, for all the different options that we offer our people come into the profession.
We haven't voted on the sub. We need to vote on the sub first. I know it's been a long day. All those in favor of the committee sub say aye. All opposed, no. Committee sub's adopted. Now we have motion on the bill. Is there a second? We have a second. Representative Bojanowski has a question.
So I did K-TIP, and it was phenomenal. It was a lot, and I know that we're kind of looking at doing something not quite exactly the same as K-TIP, but I want to ask a little bit about the mentor teacher. So the mentor teacher, would that teacher be continuing to carry a, full caseload or have her own responsibilities? And is this something that maybe there would be an additional compensation for being a mentor teacher?
Well, you preface this question very, very well. One of the things that I was concerned with is the burdens in the classroom on teachers today is overwhelming. And I remember what going through K-TIP was like. I also know what being a K-TIP mentor teacher was like, and it's incredibly burdensome in both directions. This is a much more streamlined version of that, where mentors would be compensated for their time. And it would be very, ultimately the program will be set up by EPSB as far as the specifics, but ultimately it's for helping teachers. Well, ultimately the goal is to keep teachers in the classroom once they're hired, period. Okay, then there are secondary things of importance, working on classroom management, lesson planning, overall culture of the building. I know a lot of school districts are already doing this on their own, but I wanted to kind of express my importance for this particular issue by bringing this bill forward. You're welcome.
I have a question from Representative Emily Callaway.
Thank you. We're going to be creating an additional burden on EPSB, and some of that may fall back onto our districts. So how do you address those concerns?
Well, first and foremost, I think that there are, just look at the issues we've dealt with so far this session. I mean, we've talked about bus drivers, we've talked about school discipline, we've talked about truancy, we've talked about all these issues. But I think it's time that we go on the offensive. What I mean by that is I think we need to start attacking the problems in education, and that's our student achievement. All of the problems we've dealt with so far are fixes for things. Now let's be aggressive, and let's move into the direction of something that's very, very important. We have to prioritize. To answer your question, we have to prioritize. And I think that if all we're doing is run around plugging holes, and we're not figuring out why the water's coming through in the first place, then we're just going to be plugging holes for the rest. And this profession needs to go on the offensive and really start focusing on student achievement. And the magic is in the classroom.
Representative Truitt.
Got a couple questions, if that's okay, Chairman. The first one is, I see the benefit in this. I guess first was a statement. I see the benefit of this, especially for our option 6 folks, who, may be coming to the education world later in life, maybe after pursuing another career. Me and you have talked before about, would you object to maybe looking at including some of the co-ops in this area? Would you have any objections towards that?
Absolutely not.
Next question I have for you. Do you think that if you would have had a better intern teacher early on in your career that you could have become a better educator?
Mr. Chairman, if I had you as my mentor teacher,
you're under oath now.
No.
I do have a question, Representative Timoney. I've got good news and bad news. There's 12 days less of session. That's the good news, and that's also the bad news. Getting a little late in the year. It mentioned funding. Are there any funds provided for, or would there need to be funds provided for this to be enable local districts to fully implement this section?
There will be funds needed for this.
Okay. So if this bill were to move forward, it would probably need some budget language as well.
Yes, sir, it would.
Second question, you mentioned the mentorship piece. Could you address a little more specifically on the certification pieces you have in here, the changes to certification and how those processes would work?
Yes, sir. In particular, we mentioned the committee sub dealt with all the different options that we have, the different pathways to become teachers. And there was a circumstance that if you read our statutes to the letter, there were some conflicting issues with you couldn't get a certification unless you had a job offer. At the same time, you couldn't get a job offer unless you had a certificate. So it did clarify that. And it also dealt with, instead of offering that initial internship piece, it gave you a provision. It gave you your certificate, a 5-year certificate right off the bat. Once you passed your teacher prep program, and then once you passed whatever assessments you need to do, in Kentucky's case, in most cases, it's the praxis. It removed that additional obstacle for teachers to remain in the classroom. I weighed that heavily. I looked at that because quality is very, very important to me. But where we are right now, we need to remove obstacles. And if you've passed your teacher prep and you've passed your praxis, we're going to go ahead and give you your certificate. And then we're going to coach you up. School districts still will have tenure if teachers are just not making it. If it's just not supposed to be, if it's not supposed to be, they will still have that opportunity to non-renew up to that point. But I think it was important to address that one additional obstacle and remove it from preventing teachers from being in the classroom.
See no more questions, and House Bill 828 is amended by the committee sub, having received a proper motion and a second. Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
Briefly explain my vote.
Proceed.
I'm a yes, and I also want to say that Representative Timoney was a fabulous administrator when he was the assistant principal in my building many years ago. So kudos to him.
Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Brown?
Yes.
Representative Emily Callaway?
I'd like to briefly explain my no.
Proceed.
Thank you. So while I absolutely acknowledge the importance of mentorship, I've seen it within one of my counties in Bullitt County. They're doing phenomenal things there, and I would tell any county who's considering it, they could look to them for an example of what that looks like. I just can't get behind some burdensome, unfunded mandate or statute like this. So I appreciate the work, and I look forward to seeing what we can do to work out the rest of it. But I'm a no today.
Representative Josh Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Doan?
Yes.
Representative Jackson,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Massaroni,
Yes, and may I record my other votes I missed?
We'll do that after
Okay.
we finish this vote.
Thank you.
Representative McCool, Representative Rayburn,
Yes.
Representative Rawlings,
Yes.
Representative Raymond,
Yes.
Representative Riley, Representative Timoney,
Yes.
Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Representative Wilner,
Yes.
Chair Tipton.
Chair votes yes. House Bill 828 is amended by the committee substitute, having received 18 yes votes and 1 no vote. Passes with favorable expression. The same should pass on the House floor. Representative Massaroni, you're recognized to record
Thank
votes.
you. On House Bill 799, I'm a yes, and House Bill 695, I'm a no. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard from a couple of members of the Kentucky Student Voice team today, and I believe that there are several members of that group here, and I wonder if we could maybe just recognize them and have them
Please,
identify
would you all
themselves.
rise? Thank you all for being here today. Appreciate. Hope it's been an informative morning for you. And yeah, Representative Lewis would like to record a vote, I believe.
Record a yes vote on House Bill 695, despite that sponsor also. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else seeking to be recognized? If not, the meeting's adjourned.